Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. My name is Teacher Samuel, and today we're going to take a look at a fraction problem. Now, this kind of problem is a very common type of question in the SASMO contest. So without further ado, let's take a look. I'll read the question out for you. Tom had Lego blocks. He lost 4 pieces at home and then gave 1/4 of the remaining to his friend Gary. After that, 3 pieces got lost. Then he gave 1/3 of the new remaining to another friend, Fiona. Another 2 pieces were lost. And then he gave half of the new remaining to his brother. At the end, Tom has 19 Lego blocks left. How many Lego blocks did Tom have originally? Wow, this looks like a very complicated question. Look, there's numbers, there's fractions, and then there's even different details like first he lost. Then he gave the remaining to his friend. How are we going to solve this problem? Not to worry, I'll explain it calculating step by step. But first, let's take a look at a very simple real-life example. Let's say in this example, today I spent $5 on my lunch. And then after lunch, I lost half of my money. At the end, I have $10 left. How much money did I have originally? Well, how would you solve this example? I'm sure that for many of you, you did it in your head. For example, you said I have $10 left. And before that, I lost half of my money. So, to account for that, I doubled $10 to get $20. And then before that, I spent $5 on my lunch. And to account for that, I would add $5 to get $25. Now, if you said that, you're absolutely correct! Congratulations! And we can express this very clearly if we draw a picture. So let's go. So first, I would draw an empty box to represent the money I had originally. I would then draw a right arrow to represent the $5 I spent on my lunch. And to account for this, I would subtract $5 to a second empty box value I don't know. Another right arrow to account for losing half of my money, and to account for that, I would divide by 2 to get the $10 I have left. Now we would work from the right to the left. So we would work backwards. So first, to account for the divide by 2, if we go to the left, we would have to multiply by 2 to reverse the division by 2. And so we would get $20. And to reverse the subtraction by $5, working backwards, I would add $5 to get $25. And so the answer is I had $25 originally. Now let's see if we can summarize this example. So it looks like there are processes in this question. I spent $5 on my lunch and then I lost half of my money. And it also looks like we have a result. I have $10 left. That's the result. So this kind of question we call a no process and result question. And what is the method we used? Well, we used the question to work from left to right, and then to go from right to left, we simply work backwards at every step. For example, division we reverse by multiplying, and subtraction we reverse by adding. So, now that we've summarized this example, let's go back to the main question and use the same method to solve it. So, what is the first step? The first step here would be to draw an empty box. And then we will work from left to right using the question like we did in the example. So next, we have a right arrow. And to represent the 4 pieces lost at home, we would subtract 4 to another unknown value. Now, this might be tricky, so pay attention. It says, Tom gave 1/4 of the remaining to his friend Gary. How are we going to summarize that in the right arrow? Well, what does the fraction 1/4 actually mean? It means that we divide something, a whole, into 4 parts. Just like this whole circle is divided into 4 parts. And then he gave 1 part of the 4 parts to his friend Gary, which means how many parts did he keep for himself? Of course, Tom kept 3 parts of the 4th, the remaining parts, to himself. And so, to represent this in the right arrow, we would divide by 4 to represent 4 parts and multiply by 3 to represent the 3 parts Tom kept. We get another unknown value. After that, 3 pieces got lost, so we subtract by 3, and then he gave 1/3 of the new remaining to another friend, Fiona. We use the same principle as we did when he gave to his friend Gary, but in this case, we divide by how many parts? 3 parts, of course, because the fraction is 1/3, and we multiply by 2 to represent the 2 parts that Tom retained. We get another unknown value. Another 2 pieces were lost, so we subtract 2. And then finally, it says he gave half of the new remaining to his brother. And so, if he kept half, we would simply divide by 2 to get 19 Lego blocks left. Now, all we have to do is, one by one, work backwards from right to left. So, the first one, we work backwards, dividing by 2. So now we multiply by 2 to get 38. We work backwards subtracting 2, so we add 2 to get 40. Now, another potentially tricky part, but not to worry, let's think about it. The right arrow here is divide by 3 times by 2. How do we do that backwards? Well, let's think. Divide by 3 and times by 2. Remember, we were getting 2 out of 3 parts. And now to work backwards, we need to get from 2 parts to 3 parts. And so, how do we do that? Well, we would imagine, let's say, the 40 is the 2 parts, and to get 1 part of 40, we would divide 40 by 2 to get 20. That is 1 part. And then now we're trying to get back to 3 parts, like the bottom row of 3 units, and so we would take 20 times 3 to get 60. And so, we would divide by 2 and multiply by 3 to work backwards. Now let's continue. To work backwards next, we would add 3 to get 63. And in this case, we would use the same principle as before. We would divide 3 parts and then multiply by 4 to get 84. And then after that, we would add 4 to get the final answer of 88. And so, Tom had 88 Lego blocks left. Now, let's see if we can summarize this question. In this question, we have many processes, like losing 4 pieces and giving 1/4 to the remaining of his friend Gary. And we have the final result, 19 Lego blocks. So, we can call this a no process and result question also. And let's see, we worked backwards. Do you notice anything about the right arrows and the left arrows and the comparison between the two? For instance, if we divide at the top, we would multiply at the bottom. And if we subtract at the top, we would add at the bottom, and vice versa. So this is very important to keep in mind. So let's summarize everything we learned today. We learned about questions that retain no process and result. And we learned that we can work backwards to solve these questions. And what does that mean practically in the right and the left arrows? Well, it means that if we see a plus, we change to a minus when we work backwards. And if we see a minus, we change to plus working backwards. Additionally, if we see a times, we would do a divide working backwards. And if we see a divide, we would put a times working backwards. Now that you've learned this question, let's see if you can try this practice question on your own. Don't forget to type your question in the comments. Lastly, please scan the QR code on the left to contact me if you have any questions, or the QR code on the right to join our P4 study group. Thank you very much for joining us today.